The massive chamber stretched out like a metal cathedral, its walls made of gleaming silver that reflected the lights of 12 different worlds. Kim Tae-ho stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back as he waited for the final word. 3 years of talks, meetings, and careful diplomacy had led to this moment. 3 years of hope. Behind him, Park So-jin adjusted her translator device one more time. She had studied alien cultures for most of her adult life, learning their languages and customs. She knew how important this day was for Earth. If humanity joined the Galactic Council, everything would change. No more isolation, no more wandering. If they were alone in the universe. Above them, in curved seats that rose like theater benches, sat the representatives of 12 alien species. Each one looked different from the others. Some had blue skin that sparkled like crystals. Others moved like liquid metal. A few looked almost like humans, but with eyes that glowed softly in the dim light. Tae-ho had met with each of them over the past months. He thought he understood them. He believed they respected humanity's achievements. Earth had built ships that could travel between stars. They had learned to speak alien languages. They had even shared their art, music, and stories with the council members. But now, looking up at their faces, Tae-ho felt something cold in his stomach. None of them would meet his eyes. Speaker Velthari rose from her seat at the highest point of the chamber. Her crystal-like skin caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. She had been polite during all their meetings. She had even complimented human poetry once, but today her voice sounded different when she spoke. The Galactic Council has reached its decision regarding humanity's application for membership, she announced. Her words echoed in the vast space, translated instantly into a dozen languages. Park So-jin held her breath. Next to her, Lee Dong-woo, the captain of their escort ship, stood perfectly still. All 3 humans waited. After careful consideration, of all evidence presented, including cultural exchanges, technological assessments, and behavioral observations, this council finds that humanity is not suitable for membership in our alliance. The words hit Tae-ho like a physical blow. He had expected this might happen, but hearing it out loud made it real. Behind him, he heard Park So-jin take a sharp breath. Velthari continued, her voice growing stronger. The human species demonstrates patterns of aggression that concern this body. Your history shows constant warfare among your own kind. Your first response to problems is often violence. Your expansion into space has been driven by competition rather than cooperation. Tae-ho wanted to speak, to defend his people, but the council's rules were clear. No interruptions during the final judgment. Furthermore, another voice joined in. This one belonged to Zektar, a being that looked like a walking tree made of metal. Humans show dangerous levels of unpredictability. Your emotional responses override logical thinking. You take risks that more advanced species would never consider. More voices added their concerns. The Ethereal Collective spoke about humanity's violent entertainment. The Harmony Union mentioned Earth's chaotic political systems. Each criticism felt like another weight pressing down on Tae-ho's shoulders. But what bothered him most was not what they said. It was how they said it. There was fear in their voices, real fear. These beings who controlled vast fleets of ships and ruled over hundreds of worlds were afraid of humans. Why? Finally, Velthari stood again. The vote is unanimous. All 12 council members reject humanity's application. Furthermore, we recommend that contact between human and council space be limited until such time as your species demonstrates significant cultural evolution. The chamber fell silent. Tae-ho could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. 3 years of work. 3 years of hope. Gone. We understand, he said finally, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet space. We thank the council for their time and consideration. He turned to leave, Park So-jin and Lee Dong-woo falling into step beside him. They walked across the vast floor toward the exit, their footsteps echoing. Behind them, the alien representatives began talking among themselves in their own languages. As they reached the door, Tae-ho heard something that made him pause. It was laughter, not cruel laughter, but the sound of relief, like people who had just avoided a terrible danger. The 3 humans continued walking down the long corridor that led to the docking bays. Security escorts appeared from side passages, their job to make sure the humans left council space without causing trouble. They were polite, but firm. I don't understand, Park So-jin said quietly as they walked. Our application was stronger than the Velkin Republic's was when they joined 50 years ago. Our technology is more advanced than half the current members had when they were accepted. It wasn't about our qualifications, Lee Dong-woo replied. Did you see their faces? They were scared. Tae-ho nodded. The question is, scared of what? We've never threatened them. We've never even raised our voices during negotiations. They entered the docking bay where their ship waited. It was small compared to the massive council vessels around it, but it was beautiful in its own way. Clean lines and efficient design marked it as human work. As they prepared to board, Park So-jin suddenly stopped. Wait, she whispered. Listen. 2 council members were talking near a maintenance area, their voices carrying in the large space. They spoke in Galactic Standard, probably thinking no humans were close enough to understand. Phase 2 begins as soon as they cross the border, one was saying. Are you certain this will work? Asked the other. The barrier technology has been tested. Once it's in place, they won't be able to leave their system. The problem will solve itself within a few generations. And if they find a way around it, they won't. The energy drain is too subtle for them to detect until it's too late. Their star will simply fade away, and they'll think it's natural. Park So-jin felt ice in her veins. She looked at Tae-ho and saw that he had heard it too. This wasn't just rejection. This was something much worse. They boarded their ship in silence. As the docking clamps released and they began moving away from the council station, Tae-ho stared out at the lights of alien civilization. Thousands of ships moved between hundreds of stations and habitats. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Sir, Lee Dong-woo said from the pilot's seat, what are your orders? Tae-ho was quiet for a long moment. Finally he spoke. Set course for Earth. maximum speed. And then we prepare for war. 6 months had passed since the rejection, and Earth looked different now. The blue marble that had once seemed so peaceful was now covered with construction lights that could be seen from space. Every major city worked around the clock, building new facilities and testing new technologies. Choi Min-seok stood in the command center of the Global Defense Network, watching screens that showed activity across the solar system. He had been a military advisor before the council meeting, but now he commanded Earth's entire space defense operation. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on his shoulders every day. "Sir, we're getting the same readings from all the monitoring stations," reported Lieutenant Yoon Hae-won, looking up from her console. She was young, barely 30, but her understanding of quantum physics and energy fields made her invaluable to their research team. "Show me," Min-seok said, walking over to her station. The main screen displayed a three-dimensional map of the solar system. Around the outer edge, beyond Pluto's orbit, a thin blue line marked the boundary of something that should not exist. It was perfectly spherical, completely surrounding their entire star system. The barrier appeared exactly 4 months ago, Hae-won explained. "At first we thought it might be some kind of natural phenomenon, but the energy readings are too organized, too perfect." Min-seok nodded grimly. They had discovered the barrier when the exploration ship Aurora tried to leave the system for a routine mission to Alpha Centauri. The ship had simply stopped at the edge of solar space, unable to move forward no matter how much power they applied to the engines. "What about communications?" he asked. "Still blocked," another technician replied. "We can send short-range signals to our own ships and stations, but nothing gets through the barrier. We're completely cut off from the galaxy." The door to the command center opened, and Nam Ki-woo entered. He was not part of the official defense network, but his underground organization had become essential to their planning. Where the government worked on big projects, Ki-woo's people focused on smaller, hidden operations. "Any word from your contacts?" Min-seok asked him. Ki-woo shook his head. "The few aliens who were friendly to us have gone quiet. Either they can't reach us, or they've been told not to try." He paused, then added, "But we did intercept something interesting." He handed Min-seok a datapad containing what looked like a partial transmission. The text was in Galactic Standard, but some words were missing due to the barrier's interference. "Isolation protocol working as planned. Energy drain at expected levels. Solar output decreasing by 0.003% per month. Estimated. Timeline 47 years until complete stellar collapse." Min-seok felt his blood turn cold. "They're killing our sun." "That's what it looks like," Ki-woo confirmed. "The barrier isn't just keeping us trapped, it's slowly draining energy from our star. In less than 50 years, the sun will die, and Earth will freeze." Hae-won looked up from her console with wide eyes. "Sir, if that's true, then we have bigger problems than just being isolated." "What do you mean?" "I've been studying the barrier's energy signature for months," she said, her voice growing excited despite the terrible implications. "The technology it uses, I've seen equations like this before." She called up a new display showing complex mathematical formulas. These are from Dr. Sarah Chen's theoretical work on dimensional energy manipulation. She published these papers 12 years ago, but the international physics community decided the research was too dangerous to pursue. Minseok stared at the equations. Are you saying they're using our own science against us? Not just using it, Haiwan replied. They've built their entire barrier system based on human theoretical physics. Dr. Chen's work was suppressed here on Earth, but somehow the Council got hold of it and turned it into a weapon. Kiwu smiled grimly. Then they've made their first mistake. How so? If they built this thing using human science, then humans should be able to understand it. And if we can understand it, we can break it. Minseok finished. Haiwan, I want you to gather every physicist, engineer, and mathematician we can find. Start with anyone who worked on Chen's original research team. Yes, sir. But it's going to take time. This is incredibly complex technology. Time is something we have, Minseok said. They've given us almost 50 years. We're going to use every day of it. Over the following weeks, Earth's greatest minds began working on what they called Project Breakthrough. Scientists who had spent their careers on separate research projects now worked together in vast underground facilities. The goal was simple to state but incredibly difficult to achieve. Understand the barrier and find a way to destroy it. Meanwhile, Kiwu's organization worked on a different kind of preparation. If they were going to be trapped for decades, they needed to make sure human civilization could survive and grow stronger during that time. His people established hidden bases throughout the solar system, places where humans could continue their work even if Earth itself was attacked. The Council thinks they've solved their human problem, Kiwu told his team during one of their secret meetings. They believe we'll just sit here quietly and wait to die. They don't understand humans at all. What do you mean? Asked one of his lieutenants. Humans don't give up. When someone puts us in a corner, we don't curl up and die. We get angry. We get creative. We get dangerous. Kiwu looked around the room at the faces of men and women who had volunteered to work in secret for decades if necessary. They wanted to isolate us because they thought we were too aggressive. By the time we break out of here, they're going to find out what human aggression really looks like. Back in the main command center, Haiwan was making progress on understanding the barrier technology. Each day brought new insights, new pieces of the puzzle. The alien technology was impressive, but it had a fundamental flaw. It was built on human ideas. The Council's engineers are very skilled, she told Minseok during one of their daily briefings. But they think like their own species. They're logical, methodical, and predictable. Humans think differently. We're willing to try crazy ideas that might not work. And that gives us an advantage? It gives us the only advantage that matters, Haiwan replied. They built this barrier to contain the humans they think they know. But 50 years of isolation is going to change us in ways they can't imagine. She pulled up a new display showing her latest calculations. I think I know how to break their barrier, but it's going to require technology we don't have yet. We'll need to invent things that don't exist, solve problems no one has ever solved before. Minseok looked at the young physicist and saw something in her eyes that gave him hope. It was the same thing he saw in Kiwu's underground fighters. and in the workers building new facilities across Earth. It was determination. It was anger. It was the refusal to give up that made humans who they were. "How long?" he asked. "Give me 20 years to develop the theory. Give the engineers another 20 to build the technology. Give the military 10 more to prepare for what comes next." And then, Haywan smiled. And for the first time in months, it was not a sad smile. "Then we show the galaxy what happens when you try to cage humanity." 25 years had passed since the barrier first appeared around Earth's solar system. The sun still shone, though its light was slowly growing weaker. Most people on Earth couldn't see the difference yet, but the instruments could measure it. Every day their star lost a little more of its power. Zhang Wu-jin stood on the observation deck of the orbital station Genesis, looking out at the construction yards that now filled the space around Earth. His father, Kim Tae-ho, had died 3 years ago, but not before seeing his son become the commander of Earth's new military forces. The ships being built in those yards were unlike anything that had existed before humanity's isolation. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission," announced Commander Bae Soo-min from the communication station. She had worked with Yoon Hai-wan for 2 decades, helping to unlock the secrets of the barrier technology. Now she was one of Earth's top experts on alien engineering. "Put it through," Wu-jin said, turning away from the window. The holographic display showed a figure that Wu-jin recognized immediately. Oh Chang-ho had been a minor official in the Galactic Council's diplomatic corps 25 years ago. He had always seemed friendly to humans. But after the barrier went up, all contact had been lost. Now he appeared on their screen, looking older and worried. "Commander Zhang, I hope this message reaches you," Chang-ho said. His image flickered, with interference from the barrier. "I am broadcasting this from a hidden transmitter near your system's edge. I can only maintain contact for a few minutes." Wu-jin leaned forward. "We're listening." "The galaxy is in chaos," Chang-ho continued. 3 months ago, something returned from the dark spaces between stars. The Council calls them the Void Swarm, but they are older than our civilizations. They consume everything they touch. The display changed to show images of star systems. Where planets and stations should have been, there was only empty space. Entire worlds had been stripped down to their cores and devoured. The Outer Rim colonies were hit first, Chang-ho explained. The Zerion Republic, the floating cities of Altair, the crystal gardens of Vega Prime, all gone. The swarm doesn't just destroy, it learns. It adapts. Every weapon we use against it becomes useless after. "The first battle," Soo-min gasped. "How many systems have been lost?" 12 so far, with more falling every week. The Council's fleets can't stop them. Our most advanced weapons slow them down for a few hours at most. They evolve faster than we can develop new strategies. Wu-jin felt ice in his stomach. "Why are you telling us this?" Chang-ho's image looked directly at him. "Because the Council archives contain records of the last time the swarm appeared. It was 3,000 years ago. Most of the galaxy's civilizations were destroyed, but a few survived. Do you know how?" "Tell us." "They had help from a species that was considered primitive and violent." A species that fought the swarm not with advanced technology, but with adaptability and aggression. A species that could change tactics faster than the swarm could evolve. Chang Ho paused. The records don't name this species, but the description matches humanity perfectly. The transmission began to break up as interference increased. The Council is finally ready to admit they made a mistake, Chang Ho said, his voice cutting in and out. They want to ask for your help, but the barrier prevents all communication. They're too proud to admit they were wrong about humans. And now it might be too late for all of us. The signal died, leaving the command center in silence. Su Min was the first to speak. Sir, if what he says is true, then the barrier isn't just trapping us. It's preventing us from helping fight an enemy that could destroy the entire galaxy. Wu Jin nodded slowly. Get me a full analysis of those images. I want to know everything we can learn about this swarm. Over the next few days, Earth scientists worked around the clock to study the transmitted data. What they found was both terrifying and familiar. The swarm was exactly the kind of enemy that human military doctrine had been designed to fight. Look at these attack patterns, explained General Kim Hwa-young during a strategy meeting. The swarm engages Council fleets in direct combat, using overwhelming numbers to win battles. But Council military thinking is based on efficient, predictable tactics. When the swarm adapts to their strategies, they don't know how to change. Human tactics are different, added Admiral Park Min-ho. We've always assumed our enemies would adapt, so we plan for chaos and uncertainty. We expect to change our plans multiple times during a single battle. Wu Jin studied the tactical displays. What about the technology we've developed during our isolation? Su Min pulled up technical specifications for their new ships. The adaptive hull armor we designed to break through the barrier would be perfect against the swarm. Their weapons couldn't lock onto our ships long enough to do serious damage. And our quantum disruption cannons? Designed to destroy energy constructs like the barrier, Su Min replied. But they would work just as well against a living enemy that depends on energy absorption to grow and adapt. The more they studied the problem, the more obvious the solution became. Humanity had spent 25 years preparing to fight their way out of a trap created by advanced alien technology. In doing so, they had accidentally created the perfect weapons and tactics to fight the swarm. There's something else, Su Min said quietly. I've been checking our historical databases. The swarm attack patterns match descriptions from Earth's oldest legends, stories about creatures that fell from the sky and devoured everything they touched. You think they've been here before? I think that's why humans evolved the way we did. We're not naturally aggressive for no reason. We're aggressive because our ancestors survived by fighting something that most species couldn't defeat. Wu Jin looked around the room at his officers and scientists. These people had spent their entire adult lives preparing for a war against the aliens who had trapped them. But now they faced a different choice. Commander, General Hwa-young said, our ships are ready. We've almost completed the breakthrough. Technology. We could escape the barrier within months. But should we? Admiral Min-ho asked. If we break out now, we could help fight the swarm, but we'd be revealing our capabilities before we're fully prepared. Wu Jin was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. The council wanted to isolate us because they thought we were dangerous. They were right, but not in the way they imagined. We're dangerous to their enemies, not to them. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the fleet of human ships floating in the darkness. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering, designed by people who had been told they were too primitive to join galactic civilization. "Continue preparations for breaking the barrier," he ordered, "but also prepare contingency plans for immediate deployment against the swarm. When we break out of this prison, we're going to remind the galaxy why they should have asked for our help instead of trying to get rid of us." Su Min smiled grimly. "And if they refuse to accept our help? Then we'll help them anyway," Wu Jin replied. "Because that's what humans do. We protect people, even people who don't deserve it." The barrier around Earth's solar system flickered once, then collapsed like a soap bubble bursting. After 50 years of imprisonment, humanity was free. Admiral Shin Hyo-jun stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Prometheus, watching as the stars became clear for the first time in his adult life. He had been born after the barrier went up, raised in a world where the edge of space was a wall they could not cross. Now that wall was gone, and the galaxy waited beyond. All ships. "Report ready, Admiral," announced Captain Komi Young from her position at the tactical station. She had trained for this moment her entire career, but seeing it happen still felt like a dream. Behind them, the human fleet stretched out in perfect formation. 100 ships, each one built with technology that had never existed before the isolation. They looked different from the old human designs, sleeker and more alive somehow. Their hulls shifted color slightly as they moved, adapting to the space around them. "Sensor report," Hyo-jun ordered. "We're detecting massive energy. Signatures 30 light-years away," reported the sensor officer. "It matches the swarm attack patterns from the intelligence data." "And Council forces. 4 major fleets engaged with the enemy. They're losing, sir. Badly." Hyo-jun nodded. This was what they had expected. The Galactic Council's military doctrine had not changed in centuries. They relied on overwhelming firepower and superior technology to win battles. Against most enemies, it worked perfectly. Against the swarm, it was useless. "Set course for the battle zone," he commanded. "Maximum speed." The human ships accelerated smoothly, their new engines pushing them through space faster than any vessel the galaxy had ever seen. The journey that would have taken Council ships 3 days took the human fleet 6 hours. When they arrived at the battle zone, the sight was worse than they had expected. 3 Council fleets were already gone, their wreckage scattered across the system. The 4th fleet, commanded by the Crystal Hegemony, was fighting desperately to retreat. The swarm filled the space around them like a living cloud. Individual creatures the size of battleships moved in perfect coordination, their black bodies absorbing energy weapons and growing larger with each hit. They had learned to use the Council's own tactics against them, forming battle lines and focusing fire just like military textbooks taught. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Crystal Hegemony flagship," Mi Young reported. "Put it through." The holographic display showed Speaker Velthari, the same alien who had rejected humanity 50 years ago. She looked older now, and desperate. Her crystal skin was dim with exhaustion. "Unknown human vessels," she said, her voice carrying the weight of defeat. "This is Speaker Velthari of the Galactic Council. We require assistance." Hyojun studied her face for a moment. This was the being who had called humans too dangerous to join civilized space. Now she was begging for their help. "This is Admiral Shin Hyojun of the Earth Defense Fleet," he replied. "We're here to help." Relief flooded Velthari's features. "Thank you. But I must warn you, these creatures adapt to any weapon we use against them. Our most powerful ships have become useless." "We understand," Hyojun said. "Stand by." He closed the channel and turned to his crew. "All ships begin attack pattern Omega. Remember your training. These things learn from repetition, so don't give them any patterns to copy." "Yes, sir," Mi-young replied. "All ships acknowledge." The human fleet spread out and began their attack, but not in any formation the Council had ever seen. Instead of battle lines or coordinated strikes, the human ships moved like a pack of wolves. Each captain had been trained to think independently, to change tactics without orders, to be unpredictable. Commander Lim Jun-ho led the first attack group, his ship Phoenix diving straight into the swarm formation. The creatures immediately turned to engage, firing the same energy weapons they had learned from Council ships. But the Phoenix's adaptive hull simply absorbed the energy and redirected it back at the attackers. "Target their coordination nodes," Jun-ho ordered his crew. "Don't let them communicate with each other." Human weapons were different from Council technology. Instead of trying to overpower the enemy, they disrupted the swarm's ability to function as a group. Quantum disruption cannons tore apart the energy fields that let the creatures work together. Neural scramblers confused their adaptive programming. Within minutes, the perfectly coordinated swarm began to fall apart. Individual creatures tried to adapt to human tactics, but there were no patterns to learn from. Each human ship fought differently, changing strategies every few seconds. "They're retreating," Mi-young reported with surprise. "The swarm is actually pulling back." "Don't let them escape," Hyojun ordered. "If they get away, they'll learn from this battle and adapt for next time." The human fleet pursued the fleeing swarm through the system, their ships moving with deadly precision. But this was not the mindless aggression the Council had always feared. This was controlled violence, applied with surgical skill to achieve a specific goal. In less than 2 hours, the battle was over. The swarm that had destroyed 3 Council fleets was completely eliminated. Not a single creature escaped to carry information about human tactics to other swarm groups. Velthari's ship approached the human flagship, and the speaker requested permission to come aboard. When she met Hyojun in his conference room, she could barely speak. "How?" she asked simply. "You made a mistake 50 years ago," Hyojun replied. "You thought we were dangerous because we fight differently than you do. You were right that we're dangerous, but wrong about why." "I don't understand." "Council species fight to win battles," Hyojun explained. "Humans fight to end wars. You use overwhelming force because it's efficient. We use whatever works because survival matters more than being civilized." Velthari looked at the tactical displays showing the battle results. Human ships had taken minimal damage while completely destroying an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for months. "The barrier," she said quietly. "We trapped you for 50 years. Yes, you did. You could have let us die. After what we did to your people, you had every right to ignore our call for help." Hyojun was quiet for a moment. "My father was Kim Tae-ho. He was part of the delegation you rejected 50 years ago." Velthari's crystal skin grew even dimmer. "I remember him. He was dignified, even after our judgment. He taught me something before he died," Hyojun continued. "He said that being human means protecting others, even when they don't deserve it, even when they've wronged you. Because if you only help people who deserve it, you're not really helping anyone." "What do you want from us now?" Velthari asked. "Full membership in the council, immediately. No more delays, no more committees, no more discussions about whether we're suitable. Of course, anything. And complete autonomy over human space. We'll help defend the galaxy, but we govern ourselves." Velthari nodded quickly. "The council will agree to any terms." Hyojun smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "The council will agree because they have no choice. Your fleets can't fight the swarm. Only human ships can do that now." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at his fleet. 50 years of isolation had changed humanity in ways the council could never have imagined. They were no longer the eager applicants who had wanted to join galactic civilization. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. "We'll help you," he said finally, "but the galaxy is going to change. The age of council dominance is over. The age of human protection has begun." The war against the Void Swarm ended not in years, but in months. Across the galaxy, human fleets appeared wherever the ancient enemy struck, and each battle ended the same way. The Swarm, which had terrorized civilizations for thousands of years, simply could not adapt fast enough to match human unpredictability. An Seok-min stood in what had once been the Galactic Council chambers, but the room looked very different now. The curved seats where alien representatives had once looked down on humanity were gone, replaced by a circular arrangement where every species sat at the same level. Humans had insisted on this change when they agreed to join what was now called the Galactic Assembly. "The reconstruction of the Zerion worlds is proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Commander Kang Ji-eun, reading from her datapad. She commanded the Human Peacekeeping Force, a fleet that had grown from the original 100, ships to over 1,000 in just 2 years. Around the chamber, representatives from 12 species listened to the progress reports. These were the same species that had voted to reject humanity 50 years ago, but they looked very different now. Where once they had carried themselves with pride and confidence, now they seemed smaller somehow, more careful. The new defensive. "Systems are online in all major systems," Ji-eun continued. "Human-designed early warning networks have been installed at strategic points throughout the galaxy. If the swarm returns, we'll know about it months before they reach populated worlds." Seok-min nodded approvingly. He had been chosen as Earth's primary representative to the Assembly, not because he was a diplomat like his predecessors, but because he was a historian. The Assembly had learned that understanding the past was crucial to avoiding future mistakes. "What about the research stations?" asked Representative Mordak of the Ethereal Collective. His species had been among the most vocal opponents of human membership decades ago, but now he spoke with careful respect. "Construction is complete on 47 research facilities," Seok-min replied. "Human and alien scientists are working together to study swarm remains and develop new technologies. We want to be ready if anything like this happens again." The discussion continued for another hour, covering trade agreements, technological exchanges, and joint military exercises. But beneath all the official business, everyone in the room understood the real situation. Humanity had become the galaxy's protector, and no one quite knew how to deal with that change. After the session ended, Seok-min walked through the corridors of the station with Yu Dae-sung, a fellow historian who had been documenting the transition period. The walls were lined with displays showing scenes from across the galaxy, human ships patrolling trade routes, mixed crews working on research projects, alien children playing games they had learned from human teachers. "It's remarkable how quickly things have changed," Dae-sung observed. 2 years ago, most of these species had never seen a human ship. Now they depend on us for their basic security. "Change was inevitable," Seok-min replied. "The old system failed when it mattered most. They had to adapt or face extinction." They stopped at one of the observation decks, looking out at the space around the station. Human ships moved in lazy patrol patterns alongside vessels from other species, but the difference in design was obvious. The alien ships looked exactly as they had 50 years ago, while human vessels seemed to evolve from month to month. "Do you think we've been too generous with them?" Dae-sung asked quietly. It was a question many humans had been asking. After 50 years of imprisonment and attempted genocide, humanity could have demanded harsh terms from the species that had wronged them. Instead, they had offered protection and partnership. "My grandfather lived through the barrier years," Seok-min said. "He told me stories about the discussions they had during those dark decades. There were many who wanted revenge. When we finally broke free, what changed their minds? They realized that revenge would make us exactly what the Council had always claimed we were: violent, dangerous, unfit for civilization." Seok-min smiled slightly. "By helping our former enemies, we proved that we were better than they thought." Soft chime indicated an incoming message. Seok-min activated his personal communicator and saw the face of Admiral Shin Hyo-jun, now the commander of all human military forces. "Seok-min, we have a situation developing at the edge of Council space," Hyo-jun said. "Long-range sensors are detecting something unusual. It might be another swarm group, or it could be something entirely new. How are you responding?" "Standard protocol. Human ships are moving to investigate, with alien support vessels following at a safe distance. But I wanted to update the assembly before we engage." Seok-min nodded. This was how things worked now. Humans took the lead in dangerous situations. but they kept their alien partners informed every step of the way. It was a delicate balance between protection and cooperation. "Keep us informed," he said. "And Admiral, be careful out there." "Always am," Hyojun replied with a grin before closing the channel. Dae-sung had been listening to the conversation with interest. Another potential threat. "Do you think there are more dangers out there we don't know about?" "Almost certainly," Seokmin replied. "The galaxy is a big place, and we've only explored a tiny part of it. The swarm probably wasn't the only ancient enemy sleeping in the dark spaces. And humans will be expected to face whatever we find." "Yes, because we can." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, eventually reaching the memorial section of the station. Here, in a quiet chamber lit by soft blue light, stood a simple monument made of black stone. The inscription was carved in both human writing and galactic standard. "To the 50 years of silence, they celebrated our rejection. We prepared for their salvation." Below the main inscription, smaller text listed the names of every human who had died during the barrier years. Scientists who had worked themselves to death developing new technologies. Engineers who had given their lives testing dangerous prototypes. Soldiers who had died in training accidents while preparing for battles they weren't sure they would ever fight. "Do you think they understand what they put us through?" Dae-sung asked, reading the names. "Some of them do," Seokmin replied. "Speaker Velthari visits this memorial every month. She stands here for hours reading every name. I think the guilt is eating her alive." "Good." Seokmin looked at his friend with surprise. Dae-sung was usually the more forgiving of the two historians. "I don't mean she should suffer forever," Dae-sung explained. "But she should remember. They all should. The cost of their mistake wasn't just paid by humans. If we hadn't been ready, when the swarm returned, the entire galaxy would have died." A group of alien students walked past the memorial, led by their human teacher. They were young members of various species, born after the Swarm War, who had never known a galaxy without human protection. To them, the idea that humans had once been rejected from the Council seemed impossible. "The new generation gives me hope," Seokmin said, watching the students. "They don't carry the old prejudices and fears. To them, humans are just another species in the galaxy. A species that happens to be incredibly good at fighting monsters," Dae-sung added. "That, too." As they left the memorial and headed back toward the main sections of the station, Seokmin reflected on how much had changed. 50 years ago, humanity had been seen as too dangerous for civilized space. Now they were the guardians of that same civilization. The irony was not lost on him. By trying to protect the galaxy from humanity, the Council had forced humans to become exactly what the galaxy needed most. Protectors who were strong enough to face any threat, but wise enough to use that strength responsibly. His communicator chimed again with a message from Admiral Hyojun. "False alarm. Just a natural phenomenon that looked scary on sensors. All ships returning to normal patrol." Seokmin smiled and put the device away. Another day in the life of humanity's guardians. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats to face, new responsibilities to shoulder. But that was fine. Humans had learned long ago that someone had to stand guard while others slept safely. They had been doing it for 50 years during their isolation, and they would continue doing it for as long as the galaxy needed them. After all, that's what humans did. They protected people, even people who didn't deserve it.